All right, this is going to be a little bit of an unstructured ramble, but something just coalesced in my head. And I was thinking about over the last week, we've had a few announcements which, taken individually, they're impressive enough. And so, just real quick to give you a preview of what we're going to talk about. First is the hierarchical reasoning model paper. Then the fact that both Google DeepMind and OpenAI won gold at the IMO. And then finally, the ASI Arch, or the quote, AlphaGo moment for model architecture discovery. So this is the reason I'm making a video, and what I wanted to share is because my gut instinct here, and take that for what it's worth, is that what we're seeing is the bootstrapping of a new class of primitives. So for those that have been in the deep learning space for a while, you might remember LSTMs, like long short-term memories, which is a direct, well, I don't know if it's a direct predecessor, but it's a predecessor to GPTs, which we have now. Of course, back then the joke was like, a brain is just an LSTM, and of course then we get transformers and so on and so forth. And so when you look at papers like attention is all you need and those kinds of things, then you start to say, okay, directionally we know where the next direction is. And one of the things that we're starting to see, one of the overarching patterns that we're starting to see is reinforcement learning that's not necessarily dependent upon data. We're getting to the point where the models are bootstrapped and now they're able to train themselves. So one way that I think about this, particularly for the way that they're approaching problems like math, is that math is provable. Math is decidable, meaning if you have a formula or a proof, like it calculates, and it's not necessarily always that simple, but at the same time, think about how a person can practice math, where you can have a math genius who has a chalkboard and paper and pens and pencils, and they can just get better at math by self-practicing, by self-play. When you can master mathematics this way, but you can also master things like hierarchical reasoning and neural architecture discovery, I'm not saying, I need to be cautious here. I'm not saying that they all operate under the exact same paradigms. But what I am saying is that we're really bootstrapping the next layer of this is what you can do with reinforcement learning. And so I would say it is not hyperbolic to say that this is the beginning of the takeoff towards superintelligence, or that we have now invented the artificial cognitive primitives that will lead directly to superintelligence. So I made some videos earlier this year that I said, superintelligence is near, and I was mostly looking at graphs and charts, just saying, hey, look, everything is up and to the right, and it's exponential. And here we are just a few months later, where we're actually seeing some of the results of this. Now, the takeaway that I really want to leave with people is that there is no wall. So when we say that there is no wall, you might say like, yes, we already exhausted, conventional LLM scaling, where it's just more data, more tokens, more training, that kind of followed a natural decay in terms of the results that you could get. But then we found a new scaling law with inference time compute, or reasoning. And now we're finding other scaling laws with other things that you can do with reinforcement learning. So the data wall is all but gone. And now next is math. So then once you get good at math, as I've said in plenty of other videos, math literally underpins everything else that we do, from physics to chemistry to cryptography, coding, machine learning. Literally everything else is math. I personally know physicists who believe that math is the fundamental language of the universe. So if you master math, you master the universe. Now that doesn't mean that you end up with godlike powers and you can reprogram reality. At least I kind of hope not. I'm not going to discount the possibility, but just pointing out that math is the most primitive, most low-level operating system that we know of reality. So this is all very exciting. And to wrap up the end of this ramble, I'll just kind of talk about guys, keep paying attention to this kind of pattern where, people say, oh, this paradigm is being exhausted and it's going to take, 5 or 10 years to come up with the next paradigm. And then literally weeks or months later, we come up with a new paradigm. I've said before in the last couple of years, where money goes, results follow. And people say, well, not always. And you can always find a counterexample, but usually those counterexamples are the exception that prove the rule. And the rule here is that when you have a new domain like this and you have a gold rush, like I don't think anybody disagrees that we have a gold rush. Sometimes literally, you look at NVIDIA's stock price, we have a gold rush going on, and so there's a lot of money pouring in. And so a lot of people are just waiting for the next AI winter to kick in, or the next, limitation to kick in. But we're really not seeing that. And, even, what was it, about a year ago, I made a video where I said the singularity is canceled, and guys prepare for the wall, prepare for it to slow down. And I made that video to test the idea, are we actually possibly going to exhaust all of this? But what we're finding is that this possibility space, this algorithmic and mathematical possibility space, has so much room for new approaches and optimizations that there really seems to be no functional limits in sight. The glass ceiling is much, much higher than we can anticipate, so it might as well not be there. So that's why I wanted to make this video, is just say, reaffirm. Yeah, any time in the past where I said AI is running out of steam, or the singularity might be canceled, it's beginning to look like those were catastrophically wrong. And the videos that I made after that, earlier this year, saying that superintelligence is near, saying that superintelligence is near, it looks like it's not just near, it is very near. Now, of course, people are still debating as to whether or not we have artificial general intelligence, and I'm not going to debate that anymore. We have general purpose general intelligence that is smarter than you or me at many, if not most, economically valuable things. We just need to put it in robots. So now what we're actually moving towards is artificial superintelligence, which is very soon we're going to have these models. And when I say soon, I mean by the end of this year. It looks like we're going to have, or if not by the end of this year, then next year, with the next iteration of, the equivalent of this model here, the hierarchical reasoning models, and Gemini, and plus OpenAI. Don't want to leave them out. But the next iteration of these things seems like they will be at a point where they are going to be able to do things that humans just either cannot do or would be intractable for humans to do. Like, you'd need too many experts, more experts than we have, and more time that we have. Because one of the differences between cognition at different levels is not whether or not you can do it, it's how fast you can do it. So when you look at AlphaFold and Alpha 2 and 3 that did basically 500 billion years worth of protein research in a few months, that's kind of the acceleration that we're talking about. But there is going to be a difference at some point, I think, between, yes, a human could hypothetically solve this problem eventually, versus a human will never solve the problems that this next generation of models will solve. And that's kind of my personal litmus test for superintelligence. General intelligence is okay, you're competing with humans, you might be faster than humans, you might be faster than the top nth percentile of humans, but superintelligence is no human can solve this problem. It is unsolvable for human architecture. And I think that that's what we're going to be looking at here very soon, where we're going to start crossing ASI thresholds where it's okay, we have gone beyond the 100th percentile of human capability, because AGI technically ends at the 99th percentile of human capability. So that's kind of what I would personally anticipate. That's the intuition that I'm getting from reading the tea leaves. And look at my track record. Sometimes I hit, sometimes I don't, but this one feels pretty strong. So thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. Cheers. Have a good one.